Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Apollyon. Finally, we have a daily that doesn't only go to Mom or Mom's card, and because of that, I'm kinda excited to fight the Hush again. I know a lot of people wouldn't agree with me on this, but I think the Hush fight is a very interesting boss battle in Isaac. And I wouldn't say he's the best designed boss battle, or maybe that his scaling armor could have been implemented better. I think it could have, but I also think that it does provide a very interesting challenge, and it always keeps you on your toes. So hear me out here. I know, again, maybe a bit of a controversial opinion, but I think a lot of boss battles in Isaac don't really have any semblance, and they lose their excitement. I just don't feel like they're necessary in some sense. Obviously, they're there as some form of a marker that you've finished the floor, and they're supposed to be more challenging, but I find that most often than not, the actual going through the floor is a lot harder than just fighting the boss battle, and maybe that's intentional, I'm not really sure. Especially later on, once you enter those really difficult floors, there tend to be some room variations that just screw you over. I would much rather fight a predictable boss than have a full room of portals spawning fat flies at me, and I really can't do anything because of that. It's just that situation where I feel like boss battles are designed for basically any character in mind, so regardless of how strong you are or which items you get, you can always tackle them if you're good enough, but there are so many rooms which will damage you if you're not maybe fast enough or if you don't have enough damage, and I think that puts a damper on things in some sense. So for that reason, I think boss battles are poorly designed in some sense, but also in some sense they are very greatly designed because you can always tackle them. And I find that whenever I find a boss room, I usually fall into that trap that I feel like I'm safe. I feel better fighting a boss than I feel going through the floor, and that's kind of a crazy dynamic when I think about it. I'm not sure if I'm alone on this. Maybe some of you have a similar experience or maybe a similar thought opinion on this one, but it's just something that struck me as odd always. So why would a boss battle be this challenging fight that you have to overcome at the end, like in most other games? And I think that was definitely the intention at first, but then it evolved into being more of a reward. So you have this maybe a bit of a harder challenge, but then you get a reward for clearing the whole floor. So if boss battles were really difficult, imagine something like Gungeon, maybe even Dark Souls-like, then I think that would be circumvented, or there would be some other mechanics in place to make boss battles feel more rewarding, but as they are now, they usually repurpose the teams of regular enemies, so you always know what to expect. And I think that's, like I said before, probably a deliberate design decision, but I also think that they have missed the mark in some spots. Of course, you still have those really challenging boss battles which come at the end, so Mega Satan, maybe even Blue Baby, not that much, but the Lamp even is a really engaging boss battle in my opinion, but I think the most engaging of all of the boss battles that I just mentioned is definitely the Hush, and the reason for that is not only because of his scaling armor. He always will take some form of damage, or at least time to kill, regardless of how strong your run is. Again, I know this is what people dislike, but this does give some longevity and excitement to fighting the boss. If you know that regardless of how strong you are, you still have to play well in order to beat him. Obviously, if you have Brimstone or maybe a lot of damage, it's gonna be easier than if you don't have it, and that's just due to the nature of what those items entail, but it will still be a challenge, and even though it might be much easier, you will still have to fight him for several minutes at a time, and you will have to be very cautious and knowledgeable about a fight if you want to actually avoid being damaged. And I think they pulled it off well. Of course, the shield armor could be reduced or changed in some sense, but with how it is now, I think that it is that checkpoint where you feel like maybe you need to decide, are you strong enough in order to go to the Hush fight, and if you can beat him, or maybe if you have enough health. And even in some other aspects, so for example, if you have an Algiz rune, you also have to time that very carefully so you can maximize its efficiency. So when will I use my Algiz rune? Will I use it in the first stage? Probably not, because it's the easiest stage of them all. Maybe in the second one, where he starts spawning flies, also probably not, but in the third stage, he has a ton of different attacks. So will you use him when he goes underground, or will use them against continuum shots, or what will he do? And there's always that element of, obviously I want to use it just before I get hit so I can minimize the damage he's gonna do to me, but at the same time I want to save my Algiz rune for the toughest stage of the fight, or maybe even better, I want to save it for the end of the fight so I can just deal a lot of burst damage to him and just deal with the last stage the least. And I think all of those strategies are good and exciting, and when you actually have to think about how you're going to use your runes or items, it becomes a much more engaging experience. Obviously, if you have an Algiers rune in every single other boss fight in the game, you would just use it and you can pretty much kill the boss with the shield inactive, and you're never really in any danger, except for maybe Mega Satan, because he does have a lot of HP and a lot of stages and you have to deal with his minions. But I would say that others besides Mega Satan and Hush, you can pretty much kill with just one use of Algiers rune. Of course, if you're strong enough, if you have base damage, then probably not, but in a lot of cases you can, and I think that does obviously give a lot of strength to one particular rune, but in the other sense it gives a lot of play and replayability, and also a lot of excitement to fighting those boss battles again. And I missed it. I really did miss having a challenging fight that kind of tests my skill, but not only your skill, it also tests your decision making and which items you have, or maybe which runes, or maybe, like I said before, when you use it or how you use it, and all of those things I think add up to a very enticing boss battle. And because a lot of his attacks, if not almost all of his attacks, are dodgeable, except I think the tornadoes, if you're slow enough, then you really can't outrun them. But what's great is that if you know about this, you can enter the fight knowing that you're not fast enough. He's not a mandatory boss fight that you have to battle, so I feel like it's okay for him to have some attacks which are undodgeable, but also at the same time you know you can fight them if you have enough health and kind of risk it to get an additional 2 items or just an additional shop, which proves to be very useful in a lot of cases. Or even if you don't, you can just opt not to fight him. Even in dailies, I know a lot of people say you have to fight him in dailies if you want to get the highest score, but the thing is, you don't need to get a highest score, right? It's a daily, you should do what feels right, and if you feel like you can't beat Harsh in a certain point of time because you're not good enough, then just don't go to the Hush fight. Just finish the daily and try to get the highest score possible that you can get personally, and don't worry about getting the absolute highest score that might be theoretically possible in daily. And I think that would put us all in a much better mood and a much better experience and a frame of mind that would allow us to enjoy the game a bit more. But for that reason, I do tend to find Hush a very interesting boss battle, and because he's sort of a bullet hell enemy and because you have a lot of room to maneuver, there's just so many things that you can do, and knowing how he fights and what he does, and once you really learn him, I think he's okay. I really think he's okay, and maybe my opinion will change over time again once I maybe start fighting some of the regular bosses again, and maybe I have a really exciting boss battle. But I will tell you that fighting Ragman and other first floor bosses like the Haunt Ragman just puts a damper on my head, because not only are they not engaging, but they're also very tedious to fight. And I know that having this shield that Harsh has is the definition of tedious, but at least he keeps you engaged, whereas something like the Haunt makes you wait, or Ragman just also makes you focus on his little spiders which have a ton of HP, and there's really nothing you can do about it other than just keep shooting and keep dodging and hope that your patience is not gonna run out before your will to live will, because eventually that's gonna happen when you fight Ragman, especially one of those champion variants which have more HP or spawn more spiders, whatever. But talking about this run specifically, it was a really exciting one. Whenever you get quad shot, you always hope for something like a Brimstone to show up, or maybe a Mom's Knife, and thankfully this did happen today. So we got Brimstone, so that's always exciting, but there's an even better way to make this combination of items better. So give me more synergies. I always say that whenever I find a quad shot plus Brimstone combo, it's already so rare, it doesn't happen often, and the only way to make it better is really to add more synergies on top of that. So of course, we got, not of course, but we did get the inner eye or triple shot later on, which means that now we have a Hextuple. No, that's probably not right. Hextuple. Basically, we have 7 Brimstones, and you can see that we are tearing gas. We pretty much covered the entire width of a particular room with our Brimstone, and having a lump of coal on top of that, and also quite a nice base damage, just allows us to pretty much one-shot not only every room, but also every boss instantly, except for the Harsh, obviously, and Delirium, things like that. But regardless, it was an exciting run. I always enjoy whenever I get a crazy, wacky combo. I feel like if you were gonna have a strong run, it's always better to have one of these classical synergies. We have a lot of strong runs in our past, and there's always a way to make them even more fun, but I think really what it comes down to is just having a really crazy combo. And sometimes you get nostalgic for these things because it's just so exciting to see them, and especially I remember from the teasers for Rebirth when Edmund posted them online and we saw Brimstone plus Quadshot, and we were all so excited because that synergy didn't really work in Wrath of the Lamb, I think, or maybe this particular one did, I'm not really sure, it's been a very long time ago, but it's always one of those things that just kind of makes me go back to my roots and just makes me more excited excited for what's going on, and it's just, I love it, and I hope that it would show up more often. But then again, if it did, I know it wouldn't be as special, so maybe it's a good thing that it doesn't. But you saw that suddenly I jumped in like 10,000 top in points, and the reason for that was I skipped like 7 or 8 minute period, even when it sped up, of me just breaking the game. So I got a blank card plus a Gyara rune, so what I did is I duplicated the coins in the other room and the batteries in the other, and I just kept going back and forth and collecting them as much times as possible. You can see that there's a ton of nickels on the ground. And then what I did is I went to the secret room, I spawned a bunch of machines, so the blood blanks, and I played them until they paid out with their items. And I just also had a bunch of Pertra runes next to me, and I also had Algi's runes, so I could play the blood banks, not blood bags. And then what I did is I re-rolled the blood bags, I said that right, until I got the Forget Me Now. And when I got the Forget Me Now, I cleared the rest of the floor, I beat Delirium. Thankfully, I also had the Algi's rune, I also had the double Algi's, the double usage from the Gyara rune, from the blank card, because I had the car battery. So if you don't know, if you have the car battery and you use the blank card with the Algi's rune, you're not gonna get a 30-second invincibility, you're gonna get a 60-second invincibility because you use it twice, and that's what the car battery does, obviously. But once I did that, I beat Delirium, I went back to the secret room, I used the Forget Me Now, and now I'm doing the whole of the void floor again. And this is a strategy I've did, I think, like 3 times in a row now, where I go to the secret rooms and essentially I force the Forget Me Now to spawn. And I would advise to do it because obviously it does warrant you a higher score. And I thought against it on this particular run because I felt like I don't want to be the kind of person who just goes out of his way to break every single daily, because that's not what I do or how I enjoy playing the game, and I was dreading having another 1 hour long daily, but I decided to do it because the main reason was that I went to the void. I never used the Forget Me Now in the void, and I thought it might be an exciting opportunity for me to do so, and I had this awesome combo of Brimstone plus Quad Shot plus NRI, and that just allowed me to be even more excited about just going to the rooms and killing them. And I think this was one particular instance of where I would do this, and unless the Forget Me Now showed up naturally from a boss battle or whatever, I don't think I would do this again, just because it does take a lot of time to prepare and actually break the game. Like I said before, I think it took me in total like 25 minutes even to set all of this up, and then the rest was just going through the rooms and essentially one-shotting them because of how strong we were. So it's something that I would advise doing if you really want to get a high score, but I wouldn't advise doing if you want to keep your sanity, because doing this every single day is just excruciating, and it's just way too much, at least for me, to handle. I would like to enjoy the game sometimes. Of course, having and breaking the game is enjoyable, and it's very fun when you actually rank really well, but it's even more fun to just play the game and just enjoy what you have and not worry about how you're gonna get that one Forget Me Now out of a secret room because you want to get like 2,000 or 3,000 more points. But we did finish the run in the 10th spot. I think I was 4th on the leaderboard, so just shy of top 3, which would have been really good. And you can see my exploration bonus is bonkers, and that's because I did the 2 void floors, and I think I explored the entirety of the rest of the floors except for the first 4 because there were no consumables or keys or bombs, so I really couldn't go to the treasure rooms or the secret rooms. I broke the game, so my Shrek bonus is high. I managed to get to Boss Rush and Hush, and our damage penalty was relatively low, at least for how far we've gotten into the game. It could have been still a bit lower, but it's okay, I can't complain too much about it. Obviously, the one thing that really did punish us here was the time penalty. I just took 1 hour and 15 minutes in total to beat this daily, and it was, again, excruciating, but again, I do feel like it was worth it because I'm in the top 5, and that's pretty exciting. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.